It's her. It's Eliza. The words tumble from my lips like stones, heavy with the weight of betrayal. The bank employee looks confused as she glances between me and the image on her computer screen. Under the harsh fluorescent lights, my sister's face stares back at me from an ID card bearing my name. My stomach twists into knots as the final piece of the puzzle locks into place. My own twin sister has stolen my identity, ruined my reputation, and watched me lose everything without saying a word. Next to me, Mia squeezes my arm reassuringly, but I barely feel it. All I can think about is how I'm going to confront Eliza at the family reunion tomorrow. How I'll finally make everyone see the truth I've spent weeks uncovering. Emma? Mia's voice breaks through the fog. Are you okay? I'm not okay. I haven't been okay since that night 6 weeks ago when my world collapsed. But tomorrow, finally, everything will change. I'm ready to take my life back, I say, and for the first time in weeks, I truly believe it. Flashback, the accusation. 6 weeks earlier, I walked through the front door of my childhood home with a stack of my third graders' artwork clutched to my chest. Teaching elementary school might not be glamorous, but the colorful thank you cards from my students always brighten even my darkest days. I had no idea that evening would be the beginning of the darkest days I'd ever face. Dad and Eliza were waiting for me in the kitchen. The moment I saw their faces, Dad's flushed with anger, Eliza's carefully composed into a mask of concern, I knew something was terribly wrong. How could you bring this shame on our family, Emma? Dad thundered, his voice filling every corner of the kitchen. He stood at the head of the table where legal documents were spread out like an accusation. Eliza leaned against the counter, arms folded, her lips pressed into a thin line as she watched the scene unfold. I stood frozen, my heart racing, the children's artwork still clutched against my chest like a shield. What are you talking about? I asked, but even as the words left my mouth, I saw the bank logos on the documents, the bold red final notice stamps. My name is Emma Morgan. I'm 26 years old, and until that moment, I thought I knew who I was. A dedicated elementary school teacher. The quieter of two identical twins. The daughter who stayed close to home after mom died from cancer 5 years ago, while Eliza pursued a more glamorous life in real estate. These came in the mail, Dad said, his voice dropping to a dangerous calm as he tapped the papers. Multiple loans. All defaulted. All in your name. I couldn't have taken out loans. I'm careful with money. Mom taught us both to be careful. The thought of our mother flashed through my mind, how she'd sit us down every month to review the household budget, teaching us the value of saving. Money troubles follow 3 generations, she'd warned, recounting how her own grandmother had lost everything in the Depression. I didn't do it, Dad, I said, my voice shaking but firm. I don't know how this happened, but it wasn't me. Eliza shifted, her eyes glinting as she finally spoke. Come on, Emma. Are you seriously denying it? Everyone knows your name is on the documents, she said, her voice laced with what sounded like pity. Why don't you just tell the truth and stop dragging this out? Why isn't she defending me? We've always protected each other. A memory surfaced, Eliza taking the blame when I accidentally broke mom's favorite vase at 12. Me covering for her when she missed curfew at 16. When had that sisterly loyalty disappeared? Dad's expression hardened as he looked at me. So what are you saying? This is all a coincidence? The loans, the complaints, the accusations from people in those places? Why would they target you for no reason? I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. Because someone framed me, Dad. Someone used my name. I don't know how, but I swear to you, I didn't do any of this. My eyes darted to Eliza, who raised her hands in mock surrender. Framed, really? Eliza said, her tone dripping with disbelief. Who would go through all that trouble, Emma? And why you of all people? This sounds more like an excuse than anything else. At home, the rejection. Dad shook his head, pacing the room. Emma, I've always tried to be patient with you, but this is too much. You're not a child anymore. You need to take responsibility for your actions. Until you can, you're not welcome here. The words hit me like a slap, and I felt the ground beneath me shift. Dad, you're kicking me out? I whispered. I stood there frozen as my father's words sank in, just like when he sent mom's parents away when they questioned his financial decisions. Always so quick to cut people off when they challenge him. Dad had always been this way, decisive to the point of harshness. After mom died, he'd retreated further into his rigid worldview, finding comfort in black and white judgments rather than navigating the messy gray areas of grief. Eliza sighed dramatically and shook her head. I hate to see this happen, but maybe some time away will help you reflect, Emma, she said, her voice honeyed with false concern. I looked at her, my throat tightening with anger and disbelief. You're loving this, aren't you? I said, my voice low. You've been the perfect one your whole life, and now you're watching me take the blame for something I didn't do. Eliza isn't the problem here, Emma, Dad snapped. You are. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Pack your things and leave tonight. The finality in his tone left no room for argument. My chest ached as I turned away, blinking back tears, knowing that no matter what I said, no one would believe me. In my room, packing, I packed my bags in silence, each item a painful reminder of the life I was leaving behind. The walls of my childhood room felt foreign now, as if they belonged to someone else, a version of me that no longer existed. My fingers traced the edge of a framed photo on my nightstand, Eliza and me on our college graduation day, arms around each other, identical smiles beneath identical caps. Mom had been gone just 6 months then. Dad had stood stoically through the ceremony, but Eliza and I had clung to each other, united in our grief. When did we become strangers? I slipped the photo into my bag, unable to leave it behind despite everything. Eliza leaned casually against the doorway, watching me with an unreadable expression. I wish it didn't have to be this way, she said softly, her tone laced with sympathy that didn't quite feel real. I kept my back to her, shoving clothes into my duffel bag. Yeah, me too, I muttered, my voice heavy with defeat. It's just everything looks so bad right now, Emma. Maybe some time away will help you figure out how this happened, she added. I froze for a moment, gripping the edge of the dresser. I didn't do this, I said quietly. I don't know how or why it's happening, but I didn't do it. Eliza sidestepped back into the hall. I hope you figure it out, for your sake. Really, I do. Her words echoed in my mind as I zipped up my bag and walked out of the room, unable to shake the feeling that something wasn't adding up. The night air was cold and sharp as I stepped outside, my duffel slung over one shoulder. The house behind me, once a place of warmth and memories, now loomed like a shadow filled with accusations and betrayal. I paused at the edge of the driveway, glancing back at the window where the light still glowed faintly. Dad hadn't even come out to see me leave. He'd made his decision and didn't care to look back. Just like when Mom got sick. He couldn't face it, so he buried himself in work, leaving us to handle it alone. As I walked down the street, clutching the strap of my bag, I told myself one thing. I might not have answers now, but I wouldn't stop until I found them. Something didn't add up, and I was going to figure it out, even if no one believed me. At the bus station, alone. The bus station was nearly empty when I arrived, the flickering fluorescent lights casting long shadows across the tiled floor. I bought a one-way ticket to the nearest city, my fingers trembling as I handed over the cash. The clerk barely looked at me, sliding the ticket across the counter without a word. I found a seat in the corner, away from the few scattered passengers. The reality of it all began to sink in as I stared at the crumpled ticket in my hand. I was alone now, no home, no family to fall back on. My mind raced with questions I couldn't answer. How could everything fall apart so quickly? Who would go to such lengths to frame me, and why? I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts, stopping at the number for the school principal. I'd have to call in the morning, explain that I needed a few days off. What would I say? That my family had thrown me out because of loans I never took? That I had nowhere to live? The engine of an approaching bus rumbled in the distance, pulling me from my thoughts. As the vehicle rolled to a stop, I tightened my grip on my bag and stood. This wasn't the life I'd envisioned, but it was the one I had to face now, one step at a time. At the shop, meeting Mia, the first few days after leaving home were a blur of cheap motel rooms, instant noodles, and restless nights. I was barely holding it together, my mind spinning with everything I'd lost. But staying in bed and wallowing wasn't going to solve anything. I needed to survive, and that meant finding a job, any job. I landed a position at a small clothing store downtown. It wasn't glamorous, but it was something to keep me busy and bring in a paycheck. My coworker, Mia, was a few years older than me, with bright red hair and a no-nonsense attitude. She didn't pry, but she had a way of getting me to talk without realizing it. One slow afternoon, as we folded shirts near the register, I found myself opening up about what had happened. It's been a nightmare, I admitted, stacking a pile of sweaters. I don't even know how my name got dragged into it. I've never done anything like that in my life. Mia paused, leaning against the counter. That's rough, she said, frowning. You said it was loans and fraud, right? Did you ever think, I don't know, maybe someone pretending to be you could have done it? I stopped mid-fold, her words hitting me like a jolt. Pretending to be me? I repeated, the idea foreign, but oddly plausible. I mean, I guess it's possible, but who would go to that kind of trouble? She shrugged, tilting her head. I don't know. Is there anyone who looks enough like you to pull it off? Her question hung in the air, heavy with implication. For a moment, I couldn't answer. My mind flickered to the one person who fit that description perfectly. Eliza. But no. Why would she do something like that? Still, the seed of doubt had been planted, and I couldn't shake it. I hesitated, my hands frozen mid-fold. There's my twin sister, I said slowly, the words tasting strange as they left my mouth. We're identical, Eliza, but she would never do something like that. Everyone loves her. Would she, though? Hadn't she always been jealous of my relationship with Mom? A distant memory surfaced. Eliza, age 13, wearing my clothes, pretending to be me to get extra attention from Mom when she was starting to get sick. It's just a game, she'd said when I confronted her. Don't be so sensitive. Mia raised an eyebrow, leaning her elbows on the counter. A twin, identical? Emma, come on. If someone's pulling this off, they'd need to look exactly like you, and you're telling me your twin is completely innocent? I shook my head, the idea twisting my stomach. She's always been the perfect one. My dad trusts her completely, everyone does. There's no way she'd risk all that for something like this. Besides, why would she frame me? Mia gave a short laugh, the kind that wasn't meant to be funny. I don't know. Jealousy? Spite? You'd be surprised what people are capable of when they think they won't get caught. I mean, who better to impersonate you than someone who looks just like you? At night, that night, I lay awake in my tiny apartment, staring at the cracks on the ceiling. Mia's words echoed in my mind, refusing to let me rest. Who better to impersonate you than someone who looks just like you? Eliza had always been the center of attention, the one who could talk her way out of anything. And me? I was the quiet one, the easy target. But could she really do something so cruel? I pulled out my phone, scrolling through old photos. There we were, Eliza and me, side by side, practically mirror images. I remembered how she used to joke about how easy it would be to trick people. Back then, it seemed harmless, just her being playful, but now it felt like those jokes were hiding something darker. No one can tell us apart except Mom, she'd say with that mischievous glint in her eye. We could rob a bank and no one would know which twin did it. I stopped at a recent picture from Christmas, noticing something I hadn't before. Eliza's designer watch, the expensive coat, the new highlights in her hair. Real estate was doing well, she'd said. But was it doing that well? I'd asked her once how she could afford it all, and she'd laughed it off, saying, "Oh, just a little treat for myself, you know." I've been saving up. As much as I didn't want to admit it, a part of me couldn't shake the possibility. If it was Eliza, she'd gone to great lengths to make sure I took the fall. And if that was true, I needed proof. I couldn't confront her or anyone else without evidence. This wasn't just about clearing my name anymore, it was about finding the truth, no matter how much it hurt. The investigation begins. The next morning, I made a decision. I wouldn't call my dad or Eliza, not yet. If there was even a chance Mia was right, confronting them without proof would only make things worse. Instead, I'd focus on finding answers. At work, I told Mia I wanted to look into it. Unsure how she'd react, to my surprise, she grinned and clapped her hands together. Finally, I was wondering if you'd decide to fight back. Let me help, she said, her enthusiasm catching me off guard. You don't have to get involved, I said nervously, twisting a hanger in my hand. Don't be ridiculous. I live for this kind of stuff, Mia replied with a wink. Besides, two heads are better than one, right? Let's start with the basics. Where did these fraud claims come from? Do you have any paperwork or details? I nodded, pulling a folder from my bag. I'd managed to keep copies of the notices that had been sent to my dad's house. Mia scanned through them, her eyes narrowing as she flipped the pages. Most of these are linked to loans and accounts, she said, tapping the papers with her finger. We should check where these were opened. Maybe there's a trail we can follow. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. Mia's determination gave me strength, and together we began piecing together the puzzle. If Eliza, or anyone else, was behind this, we'd find out one way or another. The evidence mounts. Over the next few days, Mia and I worked tirelessly during our lunch breaks and after shifts. We sat at her tiny kitchen table, combing through the paperwork and trying to track the accounts. She had a knack for details, noticing things I'd overlooked, like slight variations in handwriting and the locations where the accounts were opened. Look at this, she said one afternoon, sliding a document toward me. The signature here doesn't match yours exactly. It's close, but not identical. And all of these accounts, they were opened in the next city over. I stared at the paper, my heart pounding. Eliza was in that city a couple of years ago, I said. It was for a volunteer project. A volunteer project she never talked about in detail. A project that somehow had her coming home with new clothes and a mysterious new circle of friends. I paused, the words catching in my throat. Do you think? Mia leaned back in her chair, her expression serious. It's starting to look like someone used your name while they were there. And if she was the one spending time in that city. She let the sentence hang, the implication heavy. I swallowed hard. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but it's starting to feel like all the roads lead to her. Mia nodded. We'll need more. If she really did this, there will be a bigger trail. Let's check for any transactions or other records linked to these accounts. Her confidence gave me the push I needed. I wasn't ready to accuse Eliza outright, but the pieces were falling into place. I could feel it. We were getting closer to the truth. At the credit union, the revelation. The first place on the list was a small credit union on the edge of town. Mia and I stepped inside, the faint smell of paper and stale coffee lingering in the air. A young woman behind the counter glanced up and smiled. Welcome back, she chirped. I froze. Excuse me? The woman's smile faltered slightly, but she recovered quickly. Oh, sorry. I thought you'd been in here before. You look so familiar. Mia shot me a quick look but said nothing. I forced a smile and approached the counter. Actually, I'm here about a loan that was opened in my name. I need to understand the details. The woman nodded, typing something into her computer. As her eyes scanned the screen, she frowned slightly. Yes, I see the account. It was opened 2 years ago. You provided the documents in person, so we'll just need to verify a few details. In person? I repeated, my voice shaking. Yes, she said slowly, her gaze darting between me and the screen. You brought your ID and signed the forms here in the branch. She hesitated, then added, it was during a quiet afternoon. I remember because we chatted briefly about how warm it was for that time of year. Eliza always complained about the heat more than I did. She would have mentioned the weather. Mia leaned casually against the counter, her expression calm but her eyes sharp. Is there any chance you could pull up a copy of those documents? We'd like to check everything carefully. The employee hesitated. I can't let you take them, but I can show you the scans in the system. She turned the monitor slightly, and there it was. My name, my signature, and my face. Except it wasn't my face. Not exactly. Mia stepped closer, her voice low. Emma, that's your sister, isn't it? My stomach dropped. The face on the screen was identical to mine, but with subtle differences only I would notice. The slight tilt of the smile, the way she held her head. I couldn't deny it. It was Eliza. My hands trembled as the truth I'd been avoiding stared back at me. Meeting the lawyer, the decision. The next day, I met with a lawyer named David Cole, a calm, middle-aged man with a sharp gaze that seemed to see through every word. His office was modest but orderly, with files stacked neatly on his desk and a faint scent of coffee lingering in the air. I've been notified that I defaulted on multiple loans, I explained, my voice steady despite the nerves bubbling under the surface. I didn't mean for this to happen, but I need to understand the legal implications if I don't pay or if I do. David leaned back in his chair, clasping his hands. If you pay off the defaulted loans, it won't erase the records of the defaults, but it can prevent further legal action like lawsuits or wage garnishments. However, your credit history will still show the defaults unless the lenders agree to remove them, which isn't guaranteed. I nodded, digesting the information. And if I don't pay? That's a different matter, he said. The lenders could escalate to lawsuits to recover the funds. If they win, they could seek judgments against you, which might include seizing assets or garnishing wages. It could also hurt your ability to secure credit or loans in the future. I'd never be able to buy a house, never get a car loan, maybe even lose my job if the school found out. His explanation was clear, but it left a sinking feeling in my stomach. Would paying them off at least help clear my name, even if the defaults stay on record? David tilted his head, considering it. It could show good faith that you're taking responsibility and trying to resolve the issue, but clearing your name entirely would require addressing how the loans came about in the first place. If there's any question of identity theft or fraud, that would need to be investigated. I hesitated for a moment before speaking. What if, hypothetically, someone had stolen my identity and used it to open those loans? Would that change anything? David leaned forward, his sharp gaze narrowing slightly. If your identity was stolen, that's a serious matter. You wouldn't be legally responsible for the loans, but you'd need to provide evidence to prove you weren't the one who opened them. That typically involves filing a police report, notifying the lenders, and disputing the accounts with the credit bureaus. And what happens to the person who stole my identity? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. That depends, David said, his tone firm. If you provide evidence of identity theft, it becomes a criminal matter. Law enforcement could get involved, and the person responsible could face charges for fraud, forgery, or other related crimes. Penalties could include fines, restitution to the lenders, or even prison time, depending on the severity of the case. Prison. Eliza in prison. Could I really do that to her? An image flashed in my mind, Eliza holding my hand at Mom's funeral, both of us barely able to stand. Despite everything, she was still my sister, my twin. The other half of me. I swallowed hard. So if I come forward with proof, I'll be cleared, but the person behind this, they could face serious consequences? Yes, he said, meeting my eyes. But clearing your name is your priority. If someone close to you is responsible, I know it might feel complicated, but remember this isn't just about money. It's about justice and protecting yourself from further harm. I nodded slowly, his words settling heavy in my chest. If it came to that, I'd have to make a choice. Protect the person who betrayed me, or finally fight for my own truth. That's when the plan formed in my mind. I would confront her, but on my terms. My family had a big gathering every year at Thanksgiving. With everyone present, I'd lay out the proof of what she did. I wanted her to feel the weight of her betrayal, to see the disappointment in our father's eyes, and to be held accountable for what she'd done to me. But I wouldn't turn her into the authorities, not if she agreed to make it right. Eliza would have to settle the loans she'd taken out in my name. She would fix this mess and take responsibility quietly, without dragging me through further humiliation or legal battles. It was a compromise, one that spared her the worst consequences while giving me the justice I deserved. Thanksgiving was only a week away. That gave me just enough time to gather everything I needed. Thanksgiving Day, the confrontation. The moment I stepped through the door, a wave of cold stares hit me like a slap to the face. Conversations halted mid-sentence, heads turned, and I felt the weight of 50 pairs of judgmental eyes boring into me. My heart pounded, but I straightened my shoulders and walked further into the room, refusing to let their disgust break me. This is exactly how Mom must have felt when she first told everyone about her diagnosis. All those pitying looks, the whispers. Whispers followed me as I passed. Can you believe she had the nerve to show up after everything she's done? Unbelievable. I heard she's being taken to court. The room was packed with relatives I hadn't seen in years. My dad stood near the fireplace talking to Uncle Richard, but when he saw me, his face darkened. Eliza, ever the actress, stood near the buffet table surrounded by a group of cousins who hung on her every word. She glanced at me, her eyes narrowing slightly, but her expression quickly shifted into one of practiced pity. Emma, Dad called, his voice clipped and cold. I'm surprised you even showed up. I forced a polite smile and held my ground. Of course I showed up. It's Thanksgiving, isn't it? Family tradition. Mom's favorite holiday. She'd be heartbroken to see us like this. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Eliza sauntered over, a drink in her hand, her voice dripping with condescension. It's brave of you to come here after everything that's been going on, she said sweetly. I know things have been difficult for you lately. I clenched my fists at my sides, my folder tucked securely under my arm. You have no idea, Eliza. But that's why I'm here. I have something to say, and I think everyone here deserves to hear it. The room went silent as her smirk faltered slightly, replaced by a flicker of unease. This time, I wasn't going to let her control the narrative. This time the truth would speak for itself. The truth revealed. I stepped forward, my heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear myself think. The room fell into an uneasy hush, all eyes glued to me. I could see the disbelief, the anger, the pity in their faces, but I focused on Eliza. Her smug confidence was still there, but I noticed the faintest flicker of tension in her eyes. She knew something was coming. I began, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. I know many of you have heard things about me recently, things that make me look like a liar and a thief. I've been accused of defaulting on loans I never took and ruining the family's reputation. It's hurt me deeply to think that so many of you believe I could do something like that. Mom always told us that the truth would set us free. I hope you're right, Mom. I paused, scanning the room, letting the silence settle. Eliza shifted slightly, her smile thinning. But I didn't come here to plead my innocence with words alone. I came here with proof. I pulled the folder from under my arm and held it up. Everything I'm about to show you is documented and verifiable. Bank statements, witness testimonies, even images from the places where these loans were supposedly taken out. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, and I opened the folder, holding up the first document, a scan of the loan application with Eliza's forged signature and photo. This is the application for one of the loans. The signature isn't mine. The photo ID, though it uses my name, isn't me. It's her. I pointed directly at Eliza. Gasps echoed through the room, and her confident facade cracked for just a moment before she quickly recovered. That's ridiculous, she said, her voice rising as she laughed nervously. Why would I ever do something like that, Emma? This is desperate, even for you. But I didn't stop. I laid out every piece of evidence. The mismatched handwriting, the dates she'd been in the cities where the loans were taken out, the employees' descriptions of her. Piece by piece, the puzzle came together, and the crowd turned their eyes to Eliza, their expressions shifting from pity for me to suspicion toward her. By the time I finished, the room was buzzing with tension. I looked directly at my father, his face pale, his eyes darting between me and Eliza. Dad, I said, my voice softer now. I know you don't want to believe this, but the truth is right here. She used my name, my identity, to fund her lifestyle, and I've been left to pick up the pieces. Eliza stepped forward, her voice shrill. This is insane. She's lying, trying to turn everyone against me because she's jealous. You all know she's always been jealous of me. But the weight of the evidence spoke louder than her words, and for the first time, I saw doubt flicker in the eyes of those who had always believed her. The room was filled with stunned silence as I finished speaking, my evidence laid bare for all to see. Faces that once held disgust and judgment now showed shock and disbelief, their gazes shifting from me to Eliza with growing unease. Whispers spread like wildfire, and I could see the shift, slow at first, but undeniable. They believed me. For the first time, the weight of their judgment lifted, replaced by the crushing realization of what Eliza had done. The parking lot. The truth. Eliza's face twisted with anger as the whispers grew louder, the weight of the evidence pressing down on her. "This is ridiculous," she snapped, her voice sharp and trembling. "I don't have to stand here and listen to these lies." She shoved past the crowd, her heels clicking furiously against the floor as she stormed toward the door. "You're all pathetic for believing her," she shouted over her shoulder before disappearing into the night, leaving the room in stunned silence. As soon as the door slammed shut behind Eliza, the room erupted into a mix of murmurs and hesitant apologies. A few relatives approached me, their voices soft, laden with guilt. "I'm so sorry, Emma," one cousin said, her eyes welling with tears. "We had no idea, but I couldn't stay to listen." My heart raced as I turned and followed Eliza, pushing past the crowd. I needed to confront her alone. "Emma, wait." My dad's voice called after me. I hesitated for a moment, then kept going. I heard his footsteps behind me as I stepped into the cool night air, scanning the parking lot for Eliza. There she was, fumbling with her car keys, her hands shaking as she tried to unlock the door. "Eliza!" I shouted, my voice echoing in the quiet lot. She froze, then turned to face me, her expression a mix of fury and panic. My dad caught up, his breath ragged, and looked between the two of us, confusion and anger etched on his face. "What the hell is going on here?" he demanded, his voice breaking the tense silence. I stepped forward, my eyes locked on Eliza. "You're not running away from this. We need to talk right now." Eliza's eyes darted between me and our dad, her panic barely concealed beneath her defiant glare. She crossed her arms, leaning against the car as if she could shield herself from what was coming. The full moon cast long shadows across the parking lot, illuminating Eliza's face in a harsh light that showed every trace of her fear. For the first time since we were children, I saw my sister without her mask, no perfect composure, no calculated smile. Just raw, naked panic. She looks exactly like she did when Mom collapsed that first time, when we both realized something was terribly wrong. "Admit it, Eliza," I said, my voice steady but firm. "Tell Dad the truth about what you did, or I'll have no choice but to take this to the authorities." Her jaw tightened, and for a moment I thought she might lash out. But the weight of the situation was pressing down on her, and she knew it. "Eliza," Dad said, his voice shaking, filled with anger and desperation. "Is what Emma's saying true? Did you really do this?" Eliza scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Fine," she snapped, throwing up her hands. "Yes, I did it, okay? I used her name for the loans. I didn't think it would get this far. I figured it would all blow over and no one would even notice." Dad staggered back a step, his face pale. "How could you? To your own sister? To this family?" "I didn't think she'd be such a martyr about it," Eliza shot back, her voice cracking. "I needed the money, and she's always been flying under the radar. I thought, I thought she'd just take the heat and move on." "You destroyed my life," I said, my voice quieter now. "You let me get kicked out of the house. You watched me lose everything." Eliza's eyes welled with tears, surprising me. "You don't understand," she whispered, her composure crumbling entirely. "After Mom died, I couldn't keep up with everyone's expectations." "What are you talking about?" I asked. "Dad always looked at you the way he looked at Mom," she said, bitterness creeping into her voice. "I was just the loud one, the troublemaker. You were the one who stayed home, who took care of things. I had to be successful. I had to show everyone I was worth something too." I never knew she felt that way. I always thought I was the forgotten one. "So you stole my identity?" I asked, incredulous. "You ruined my life because you were jealous? I was drowning in debt." She cried. "The real estate market crashed just after I started. No one was buying houses. My credit cards were maxed out, and I was about to lose my apartment. I was desperate, and you thought framing me was the solution?" I shook my head, unable to process the twisted logic. "It was just supposed to be temporary," she said, wiping at her tears. "Just to get me through a few months. But then one loan became two, and I couldn't stop. I kept telling myself I'd fix it before anyone found out. Dad stood between us, his face a mask of confusion and betrayal. All this time, he said, his voice hollow, I've been blaming the wrong daughter. I'm sorry, Eliza whispered, her shoulders sagging as tears streamed down her face. I never meant for it to get this bad. I just, I didn't think it through. Dad stared at her, his expression a mix of disappointment and disbelief. You didn't think, Eliza? Do you realize what you've done to your sister? To this family? She wiped at her eyes, shaking her head. I'll fix it, she said quickly, her voice trembling. I'll pay back everything. I'll settle the loans. I'll clear Emma's name. I swear, I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. I watched her carefully, searching for any hint of manipulation, but for the first time in years, Eliza looked genuinely ashamed. You better mean that, I said, my voice firm but quieter now. Because if you don't, I won't hesitate to take the next step. This is your last chance, Eliza. She nodded frantically. I do. I'll do it, Emma. I promise. Epilogue. 5 days later. The knock at my apartment door came just after 6 in the evening. I'd been grading papers at the kitchen table, trying to focus on my third grader's crooked handwriting instead of everything that had happened at Thanksgiving. I didn't need to peek through the peephole to know who it was. I could feel it somehow, that connection we'd shared since before birth. When I opened the door, Dad stood there alone, his tall frame seeming somehow diminished, his hands thrust deep in the pockets of his worn jacket. The same jacket he'd worn to Mom's funeral. Can I come in? He asked, his voice rough with emotion. I stepped aside, letting him enter the small studio apartment I'd managed to rent after finding a steady paycheck. It wasn't much, but it was mine, a place untainted by betrayal or false accusations. Dad stood awkwardly in the center of the room, taking in the sparse furnishings, the stack of children's artwork pinned to the refrigerator, the single chair at my tiny table. I've been talking to Eliza, he said finally. She's arranged payment plans with all the lenders. They're going to clear your credit report. He paused, swallowing hard. She sold her car and some jewelry to make the first payments. I nodded, unsure what to say. Part of me was relieved, but another part still ached with the fresh wound of betrayal. I should have believed you, Dad said, his voice cracking. I'm so sorry, Emma. I failed you, just like you failed Mom when she needed you most. The bitter thought rose unbidden, but I pushed it away. There had been enough pain, enough accusations. I was so sure I knew what was happening, he continued. So sure that I understood my own daughters. But I was blind, Emma. Blind to what was happening right in front of me. We stood in silence for a moment, the weight of years of misunderstandings hanging between us. I've been thinking about your mother a lot this week, Dad said unexpectedly. About how she always seemed to know which one of you was which, even when you tried to trick her. A faint smile tugged at my lips despite everything. She always said she could tell by our eyes. Dad nodded. She could see who you both really were. I wish. He paused, blinking rapidly. I wish I'd paid more attention. I'd never seen my father cry, not even at Mom's funeral. But now his eyes glistened with unshed tears. Dad, I said softly, I'm not coming home, not yet. I need time. He nodded, understanding. I know. You need to heal, and so does Eliza. So do I. He hesitated. But maybe you could come for dinner next Sunday? Just the three of us. We have a lot to talk about. I considered his offer, weighing the hurt against the possibility of healing. I'll think about it, I said finally. He reached out cautiously, as if afraid I might pull away, and placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. Your mother would be proud of you, Emma. You fought for the truth, even when no one believed you. As he turned to leave, I found myself calling after him. Dad? He paused at the door. Tell Eliza. I took a deep breath. Tell her I'm glad she's making it right. After he left, I returned to my students' papers, but my mind was elsewhere. The road ahead would be long and difficult. Trust, once broken, isn't easily repaired. But for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. My identity was my own once more. My name was cleared. And someday, perhaps, my family would be whole again too, not perfect, not unblemished, but real, with all our flaws and all our truths finally laid bare.